In this video, I want to basically talk about when should you colonize different worlds. There's a lot of interesting variables that goes into this decision, so I think it'll be quite interesting to talk about. When I started out, I pretty much just colonized every world with a green habitability, so I believe that's 70% or above, and then the yellows and the reds I wouldn't settle. And that's kind of the way that the AI in the game is programmed to work. They just kind of colonize almost everything. They even colonize lower habitability stuff. And they'll have a bunch of these little colonies that are pointless and a big drain on their resources. I think it's much better to be very picky about the planets that you settle. And that's what I want to communicate with this video. So by default, you start with 2 guaranteed habitable worlds, and they will share the same planet class as your home world. So there will be a baseline of 80% habitability, and then that can be affected by various modifiers. So we can see one of them right now already. We have surveyed that planet. So we have this world over here. We have a 90% habitability. There's a base of 80% and then another plus 10% for adaptive. Having anything under 100% gives you penalties. So we're getting increase to pop amenities usage, pop upkeep, and then a decrease in job efficiency and a decrease in pop growth speed. In particular, the job efficiency one is particularly crippling. So we have 400 miners working on this planet, but this little green section here, we're getting a 10% bonus because it's our empire capital. So functionally, these 400 pops are working as if they were 440 pops working this job. You're going to get more resource throughput with extra job efficiency. For these basic resource jobs, it's basically just free resources. For these more specialist jobs that refine one resource type into another, like say your metallurgists that turn minerals into alloys, it does mean the upkeep of minerals will be higher the higher the job efficiency is. It's not necessarily just free resources, but job efficiency is a pretty powerful modifier. And the negative job efficiency works basically the opposite of this. These 400 pops will be working as if they were 380 pops or something like that. Habitability is a really important factor when it comes to colonizing worlds. You get so many bonuses on your capital world that what you want to do is you want to get the most amount of jobs on your capital as you can fit to get the most advantage out of those bonuses. Let's break down what all of these different bonuses are. The first one we just talked about is habitability. You don't get any penalties on your capital world. So the way you can think about that, any job that's working on this planet has a minus 5% job efficiency. So in comparison, our capital has a plus 5% job efficiency. This planet designation right here is set to auto designation, but what it's actually on right now is empire capital. So let's look at what this does. Gives us plus 5 stability, plus 1,000 amenities, plus 1,000 housing, governing ethics attraction, automatic resettlement destination chance, and job efficiency. So obviously job efficiency, we just talked about that. That is why this planet, these miners here are working this efficiently. That is from the empire capital. Then the next major one is a flat plus 5 to stability. If we look at the effects for high stability, that is giving us 20% resources from jobs. That is another really big modifier as well. And we're getting a plus 5 to that. As well as, this gives us 1,000 amenities. If we look at amenities, what amenities do is if you have high amenities, it increases your pop happiness. And if we look at the stability modifier, we're getting plus 29% stability from our pop approval rating. So basically our pops are happy, and that's leading to higher stability. Not only are we getting flat stability, we're also getting amenities that increases happiness, which increases stability indirectly. So our capital world has a really high stability, and our colonies will not have those bonuses. So you're going to get less of this high stability bonus on any colonies you settle. And because we have the prosperous unification origin, we're getting plus 15% happiness, contributing to our stability. We're getting plus 25% amenities, contributing to our stability, and plus 10% resources from jobs for the first 20 years. That's a pretty big modifier. It is temporary, but in the start of the game, that is also going to boost our economy up. So our capital world is very efficient. So as much as possible, we want to fit in as many jobs to get advantage of all of these bonuses on them. Now, we will run out of room to expand on the capital eventually. We won't be able to just infinitely build this up. There is a limit to number of districts and number of building slots that will prevent you from continuing to build your capital. So that is basically the answer to the question. When should you colonize? When you run out of building slots and district slots. Or more accurately, I would say when you're about to run out, so that your colony gets up online a little bit before you run out. try and think into the future with your strategies. Don't just react to problems that are existing right now. Predict what problems will come up soon and then prepare for them so that it never actually becomes a problem. So like when you're down to your last 2 district slots in your capital, you only have 1 more building slot, maybe then go make a colony. It takes about a year to build the colony ship, and then it takes like another couple years to actually colonize the planet. You want to be thinking a little bit in advance there. So it's a bit misleading with the guaranteed habitable worlds to immediately settle both of them. We can't see our other one right now. We'll finish this survey and kind of send the science ship to go try and find it. It's usually not too far away, within like 2 or 3 hyperlanes away from your capital. Here, we found it. In the Sirius system, we have our other guaranteed habitable world, so let's go ahead and survey all this. Man, the performance improvements are crazy. Look how fast that's running. Okay, so we have another continental world over here. This tundra world would be a very bad idea to settle on. Look at the penalties there. Minus 35% job efficiency is very bad. We really, really don't want to settle this unless we have no other choice. Unless you really wanted a strategic resource that it has, or you like absolutely need more mining districts or something like that. One of the reasons to focus your development on your capital world and try and build it up until you've completely filled it up and there's no more room to expand is this empire size modifier. Every single colony you settle, regardless of how developed it is or not, adds 20 to your empire size. That is a pretty substantial amount. And once you go over 100, you start getting penalties to your tech cost, your tradition cost, and your edict cost. And you also become more vulnerable to espionage. So fewer developed planets are better than more underdeveloped planets. Most empires are going to start with some civilians or maintenance drones. These are referred to by the game as denizens. The best way to think about these, because of the recent changes, they're basically unemployed pops. They're not working any specialized jobs, and they're very inefficient. If you hold Alt while hovering over one of these jobs, you can see what 100 pops would make. So every 100 of these civilians is making 1.91 trade value and 54.9 amenities. Let's compare that to the dedicated amenities job and trade job. So the traders produce 15 per 100 pops. So way more, about 15 times the amount. And entertainers produce 1,500 amenities per 100 pops compared to the 54. So traders and entertainers are way more efficient in their roles than civilians are. Civilians are an extremely inefficient use of your pops. You start the game with a big amount of them, and you want to get them working as quickly as possible in more practical, useful jobs. Right away, I would immediately sell off some of your initial starting resources to buy minerals in order to build something for them to do. A good first pick is usually mining districts because you use minerals to build buildings, and you also use minerals to make alloys and consumer goods. So minerals are usually a very safe initial starting thing depending on your build. That will help you ramp up your economy and make sure you can afford to continue building buildings. Until you've gotten everyone a proper job, and then you're at a point where you're waiting for pop growth to build more jobs, you want to be constantly building. One of the advantages of colonizing a world is that every planet can only build one thing simultaneously at a time. We can be having 2 different build queues running at once, so we can be building a mining district on our colony while we're building an alloy foundries on our capital or something like that. So it's not necessarily a bad idea to get a second planet up and running fairly early on. So let's go ahead and colonize this world, might as well. Another thing is, of course, colony ships are not entirely cheap, particularly in the early game. The biggest one of these is the 200 alloys, is pretty pricey, and there's a lot of things you're doing with your alloys. It costs about 90 alloys to build a starbase outpost to expand your territory. Like, you could build 2 extra starbases or something with that cost. You could build almost 2 corvettes with that cost. And just consider, like, what do you need that colony right now? You can always get it later. So let's go ahead and colonize this. So we made our new colony. We have quite a bit less stability than on our capital. Our capital is 83. This colony is only 75. So we're only getting 15% resources from jobs on the colony compared to the 20. These civilians basically want to have a job. They don't want to be unemployed, so to say. So they'll move to whatever planet has a job. They'll automatically migrate to wherever jobs are. So if you build up your colony, you can get people to move over and kind of fill it up with pops. And if you can get it up to 1,000, then you can upgrade your planetary administration. We built this mining district on the colony, and we're not growing these pops. These pops are moving from Earth over to this colony. So these are migrants coming over to fill up that job. For every 100 mining jobs on our capital, we're making 5.87 minerals. For every 100 miner jobs on our colony, we're making 4.52. So that's a little over 1 extra mineral per 100 miners on our capital. Quite a bit more efficient, because we can see here the negative efficiency. We have 200 miners here, but they're only working as if we had 190 miners, and we're also getting less resources from jobs. But getting 4.52 minerals from those 100 pops is still more valuable than getting only 1 trade value and a couple of amenities. Miners on the colony are more efficient than civilians on your capital, would be the way to say it. But miners on your capital are more efficient than miners on your colony. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So I would say having these 2 planets, like getting 1 colony up and running pretty much right away is not a bad idea. If you have 2 planets building at the same time, you're going to drain that initial starting civilians pretty quickly. So I really wouldn't recommend getting a 3rd colony right away. It's better to kind of focus your planets, have fewer, more developed planets, because our empire size, we're getting an extra 20 empire size for this colony. Is that 20 empire size worth just a couple of minerals? What you might want to do, probably the recommendation is find both of your guaranteed habitable worlds, and then look at both of them and make a decision once you've seen both, and pick the better planet. We only have 1 generator district slot available on this colony world. That's pretty bad. See, this other planet that we have has not a lot of agriculture, but it does have a lot of generator districts and mining districts. Take a look at which one you think is better for your situation. What are you going to need in the short future? Will you need a lot of agriculture districts? Are you going to just try and minimize the amount of agriculture? Maybe you get agriculture on your star bases with hydroponic bays so that you don't have pops working for food and you just get it through your starbase slots, or do you want your starbase slots for something else? Also look at the planet size. How many districts are you going to be able to build on the planet overall? So on this colony, we have a size of 14, whereas this planet over here is a size of 19. So this other planet is bigger and has more room to develop long term. So yeah, different things to consider. The other advantage of getting a colony is about getting choices in how you develop your colony. On your capital, like you have limited district specializations. So we have mixed industry and archives to start out with. But these building slots in the archives, we can only build these 2 buildings here. We can either get research labs or administrative offices. We can only get civilian industries or alloy foundries in these slots here. These initial first 5 slots, I'm not counting the administration because you can't get rid of this building. It's a wildcard slot, so you can kind of get anything you want. But then that's kind of a hard choice of like, do you really want to put researchers in these slots that can be anything? But what if you wanted a stronghold? Like this is the only place a stronghold can go on this planet because we don't have a specified military district. So there's kind of limits in what you can put in what building slot, and that flexibility of having a colony, maybe you really want to go hardcore into Unity on this colony. That allows you to kind of more specialize stuff depending on how your build is. If you're super militarizing, you want a ton of alloys, maybe you get heavy industry and you really go deep into that, and your capital world is a little bit more variety, or whatever it is. And then as this colony is developing, we're running low on amenities. So let's go ahead and get luxury residences to solve that. The advantage of luxury residences is that it's just flat amenities for the building. You don't have a pop working a job to get those amenities, whereas hollow theaters, you're using pops to get those amenities. So luxury residences are nice for small colonies to keep them happy. So we've reached a point in the game where we have completely employed all of our civilians. We have no civilians on either of these 2 planets now. So to continue expanding our economy, we just have to wait for pop growth or, get new pops in some other way. Your economy will kind of really slow down once you reach this point in the game. But this is where it's a good time to start working on, we're making way too much food. We don't have tons of uses for food right now. We can get these farmers working more productive jobs. These specialist jobs are really high value, so we want them to be as efficient as possible. We want our researchers to be extremely efficient. These worker jobs don't matter as much if they're efficient. Oh well, if we're making a little less minerals, that's not like the end of the world. So kind of what we want to do is where we're getting all of these bonuses, we're putting our most valuable jobs here on the capital, and we kind of export the jobs we don't want on the capital to our colonies that are less efficient, what you can do is kind of urbanize your capital. So over time, as you fill up all of your district slots and you can't continue expanding, you start retooling. So you're maybe like, do we really want to be producing food on the capital? We can replace that with more city districts and basically convert your farmers into more specialized jobs and get these more valuable resources. And then you start building up getting the food instead on your colonies, or getting instead the minerals on your colonies. I would say that overall the main takeaway is to not colonize too aggressively. Be very picky about which worlds you settle. Develop the worlds before you start colonizing new ones. We have no spare citizens, and we have still quite a bit of room to expand this first colony that we have. We really don't need another colony right now. It's just gonna sit there with like maybe one mining district filled up with pops, and it's just going to be waiting on pop growth anyways. Whenever you have a planetary deficit, this costs you trade value, as you need ships to import things to that planet. Right now, we're not making enough energy on this planet, so we're importing our energy from our capital world, so to say. You can see that planetary deficit on this world costs us 2 trade a month. And also, another important thing to consider is every single building and district has an upkeep. We are spending 22 energy a month on buildings and 29 energy a month on districts. You still have to pay for the infrastructure regardless of whether you're getting any value out of it or not. So you do not want to be building things that you are not employing and getting benefit out of. To summarize everything with a fun little poorly drawn analogy, say you have a glass of water. This is your planet and your ability to develop it. You have some development here, and then you continue building it out. You make more jobs, continue doing that, and then you're about to fill up your capital world. And when you're getting to the point where you're like, it's about to overflow, that's when you settle. When you're starting to overflow, okay, boom, we settle a new colony, and then it spills over into this other cup, and then you start filling up this one, over time, until, now your next colony is starting to overflow, and then continue the chain down with your next colony. This is my very crude little analogy of kind of a way of thinking about when should you colonize. That's just if you're going to try and play with an efficient mindset. If you want to role play a species that is all about prestige and colonizing every single world that they can get their hands on, go for it. That is a fun play style. Basically, the way I've always thought about role play is that it's intentional inefficiency to tell a more interesting story. Do whatever you want, of course, whatever's fun for you. But if you're looking to be efficient, wait to colonize until you actually need it. That's everything I wanted to say in this video. Thanks so much for watching, and with that, goodbye.